Well, good morning, friends. I want to invite you as you get here, the beautiful day, to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Everything that we're going to be passing out, sermon notes here in a minute. The sermon notes are just there for you to use as you find handy. But this morning, you're wondering why I might be using this mic, because Tyler just got back a little bit ago from India, from a mission trip he did there, and he's going to come up and share this morning first about the trip, about the work that he did. If you get the church email, you heard some of what was happening, but he's going to give us greater details. So you go ahead and make your way up. If you wonder why he's wearing what he's wearing, he will explain that too. But yeah, we're excited to hear from him, and he promised me he would go less than an hour. So I'm going to have you use this. That way, when you do this, because sometimes you do this when you're talking. Yeah. And then you notice the difference between this and this. Well, you gotta turn it off. There's a switch on top. This is training in action.
Oh yeah.
Does that work?
I think so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Look at that. All right.
You all hear me? All right. Well, this is well, I walked in this morning thinking, for somebody that doesn't like public speaking, that maybe I should have worn something a little less noticeable. No, it's just a tribal vest, something that we can only get in the northeast part of India. For those of you that were wondering where we went, it is all the way up in the corner of India, right next to the Burma border, in a state called Manipur. The capital is Imphal, and then we're about 2 hours outside of the capital, towards the bordering state of Nagaland and a little bit closer to Myanmar. I believe I said Manipur before, but yeah, Myanmar, Burma, you all may know. Burma right now is going through, I believe, the longest civil war in history since the 1970s. So that pays into what we're doing there. We're trying to get some orphans out of Myanmar and into India, into a slightly better situation. How we would see as slightly better is worlds better than where they're at. So heartbreaking, but this is our building site. When we showed up, the idea was something more along the lines of Homes of Hope. They would have the foundation ready for us, and we would go in and just set up some lumber walls and stuff. That is not what happened. So these stones that you see laid out, we had to pack in from, it was only about 75 yards away. They only weigh, around 75 pounds each, so it was fine. So this building site is actually an old farmer. About 5 years ago, they outlawed the farming of marijuana, so he was a marijuana farmer, and he is repenting of his ways and has donated a lot of his land, or somewhat donated. It was a very discounted price for what we got. And so this is the building site that we had, completely unclean and unready. This is the second building that will be the mess hall and meeting area. It's an existing building. We had to clean all the equipment out and take the siding off. It was bamboo siding. So we started just with packing the foundation stones and pulling the siding off of the old building. Not what we expected. The next picture is the lodge poles. As you can see, they are not straight like our lodge pole pine would be. So that was way different. We spent the first 3 days cleaning these lodge poles, turning them to the flat side, and notching out for wall studs. So if we go ahead, we actually had electricity, which was a blessing. And that was actually brought up while we were there. And as far as I remembered, we only had electricity for a couple hours a day the last time I was there. But we were blessed with electricity most of the day. So there was only, about 2 hours a day that the power actually shut off. So we had electric planers. We had to plane all the rough cut lumber that you see in the front, and then all those lodge poles. We cleaned them up with the planers and notched them for the studs. This was basically what we would call a pole barn. And this is the dirt foundation with foundation stones to set the poles on. Again, this is worlds better than where these children are coming from, which just broke my heart. This is Saturday, when I believe I sent an email Friday or Saturday for just some guidance on where we were headed, and it wasn't looking like we were going to be done, which we were not actually finished when we left. But as of Saturday, this is where we were at. We had the foundation, and they had just started building. So our part in this entire thing was a lot different than we thought. I was allowed to do a little bit of the marking out and setting things up, just because I had worked with the builder before. But 99% of what we did was cleaning the lumber for them and getting materials prepped, which, like I said, we spent 4 full days doing it. So as soon as we got those walls standing up, we had a day off on Sunday, went to church. Over here on, let's see, our right is the principal of the school and his wife, and on our left is one of the teachers, Risen. The principal's name is Kachui, and I'm not sure his wife's name. I tend to forget names. My traveling partner, Connor. So as far as the shawls that we're wearing, it was very cold. Very cold in the mornings. It was about 40 degrees, so as warm as it gets in the middle of the day here, that's what it was overnight. So there's no heat in the church. We were all wrapped up in shawls to stay warm. But they are the principal and I are wearing the tribal shawl, Tonkul, and then my traveling partner, Connor, and the teacher that you see on your left are wearing the more, what would you call it? Just common Naga shawl. So the Naga colors are red and black. Church was interesting, very different, all in a foreign language. But it's really great to be able to visit a congregation where the Holy Spirit is present, and even though they're speaking in a completely different language, it's not even Latin language where you can pick up a couple of words, the Holy Spirit will send you the message. And that was something I just wasn't prepared for, was to be able to talk to the pastor afterwards and say, I understood what you were saying. I heard what you were teaching. Again, on our day off, we got to visit a fishing pond. There's a couple of what they would consider millionaires around the area, and they build public parks. It's not like here where, they donate land so that they can get tax rebates. This is their personal home, their personal land that they build into a nice park for the public to come and visit. And it's actually a fishery, so it's the business, but it's pretty neat. It's a little bit different culture. And we got to go and just visit the park and take a day off and wander around the village. And it wore them out. So you can't see our chauffeur over there. He was about 23 years old. He was our chauffeur because there is some conflict going on. It's very safe in the village, but it requires, a little bit of knowing where you're at, who you're talking to, and just some awareness of the surroundings that we are not aware of. So we had a chauffeur everywhere we went. They got worn out. While they were worn out and taking a nap, I had a snack. So, yeah. So I went down and got myself a big bundle of bananas, and I was in my happy place for a couple hours. And then for dinner, we had our favorite meal while we were there. Several days in a row, we had pork fat. It's a good way to stay warm overnight. And it's literally pork fat. If you can actually make out the picture on the left, it is a chunk of fat that is just smoked over a fire for a few days, similar to how we would dry age beef. So the enzyme process of breaking it down kind of cures it, and then they hang it in the kitchen and cook it a few days. So it is delicious. And he's holding it with his hands because we eat with our hands. And it's very different. We kind of laughed at Connor because he's not accustomed to eating with his hands, even though he took right to it. It's a lot of fun for all you kids that always wanted to eat with your hands. That's the place to go. You get to just dig in, and if you're hungry, man, you can eat a lot faster. That's the best part. So there's a technique to it. It's just kind of funny to watch somebody, try to pick stuff up and drop it into their mouth because they're not used to it. This is actually the last day that we were there. As far as we got, everything was framed up. They needed to cut out the doors, windows, everything else. But we made some serious progress, seeing as Sunday, no one works because it's Sunday. They have church, and then it's all day, either children's church, men's church. It is a constant worship on Sunday, which is pretty awesome in the village. And then Monday, we were unaware there was what we would call a bridal shower, I guess, would be the closest thing to call it. They call it a send-off. We didn't get a picture of that, but it was one of the daughters of the village was getting married, so nobody worked. Go figure. There on the left is our replacement. Pretty much. She was probably more help than we were. I just thought it was the cutest thing. They allowed their niece to come and help build, and that's just something that we wouldn't think of in America, to just let our toddler run around the building site. And then the latrines, we didn't have a part in building that, but it's something that we don't really get a picture of very often. The bathroom situation, this is a very normal bathroom situation. If you've ever traveled to a third world country, there will be a bucket and a cup in each of those stations, and that is what you use. So it's a little bit different, and it takes some practice, but it's hard to explain, so I figured I'd get a picture for everybody.
Gun range.
Yeah. And then this is where it was at on Saturday after we got home. They really put in some work. It's 90% complete. They just had to frame up some doors, and the kids were just about ready to move in. The next picture is the mess hall. You can see they took the siding off of the backside and hadn't put the siding on yet, but it was done on Monday, and the kids were ready to move in, but there was a road closure, so they did get there to their new home on Saturday, yesterday. And this is the 10 children from Myanmar. We will have 5 more from the India side. They are going to stay in the boarding for 5 to 6 years in the village. After that time, when they finish primary school, they will go on to go back to the neighboring state in Nagaland and go to secondary school, or some of them will be attending a Bible college that we are getting set up. It is actually there already. It's just at a much smaller scale than what we're wanting to see. So we're hoping to build it up to a much larger Bible college where we can teach disciples and send them out around the world. So these children are just a small drop in the water of what needs to be done. Talking to my friend that actually traveled to the neighboring state and met the woman that is heading up this operation, there is over 1,000 children right now that need placement. And those are just the ones through the operation that they're working with. There's also on the eastern side of Myanmar and everywhere else. So it is just a drop in the water of what needs to be done, but we're hoping that, giving these kids an education and getting them out of the situation that they're in can really just show them the love of Christ and send them out to be disciples in the world. It was just a different experience this time around. Meeting some familiar faces and meeting some new faces. A different situation. Whereas the last time we were there was no conflict. So this time there was some militant presence around, which was a little unnerving at first. My travel partner didn't even notice it. It was kind of like, hey, you got to stay with the group. But so it's that safe that you can feel very comfortable. But at the same time, there's a level of anxiety that you should have visiting any third world country as an American. There's also the privilege as an American where we are very protected around the world. And that's, something that you have to weigh back and forth is I'm protected by a lot of people and I'm wanted by a lot of people for my value monetarily. One of the biggest things, these children are just smiling. It just breaks my heart every time just to know where they're coming from. There are currently in the 3 schools that we are helping, there are 68 orphans. And we use the term orphans in the international term of fatherless child. So 68 orphans, of them, there's about 13 to 15 that are without any parents. And then these children that are coming from Myanmar are without anything. So it is just an honor to be able to host them, to be able to do anything for them in our capacity. Like I said, it was a very different outcome or showing up than we thought. We thought we were just going to come and, swing a hammer. And we were a lot more help in other ways than we thought we would be. It was very frustrating at first, the first couple of days when we're just, running a planer across lumber. We're like, we're not doing anything. But we allowed the builders, the ones that are there and know how to build with those types of materials, the time for 3 days to just get on it and start building, which took a couple of days to actually realize the impact that we were having. When Saturday there was nothing, just a couple of walls that we were propped up with lumber, and then by the time we left it was framed and ready to be sided. So that impact was great. The biggest thing that I carried home was talking to the people around the village. Everybody wanted to know about Los Angeles. Yes. So everybody was asking about Los Angeles. And they knew we weren't from Los Angeles. They know where Idaho's at. Cosmo is from there. And, he's been there the past 20-something years, traveling back and forth from Idaho. So they know where we're at. They know we're not part of Los Angeles. But they keep asking about the news, which we had no news because it started about the time we started traveling. So we're like, tell us about it. And it finally got explained to me that everyone there was praying for Los Angeles. Everyone there is praying for our country. Everyone there was praying for our leaders. Not to get into anything political, but they see us, the United States, as a security. Without the United States, there are hundreds of small villages, hundreds of small nations, Christian people that are at risk. And we don't realize that. We tend to fight against our government in getting involved in some of these conflicts. And we don't realize the impact that they're having on those terrorist groups that would feel like they had free reign to cause terror around the world. So that was something that I really brought in and realized that I may not agree with a lot of politics and I may not agree with a lot of stuff going on, but how the rest of the world sees us and how we can say, well, that's not our place. We have a huge presence and we have a huge responsibility being a first world nation. Not just the United States, but United Kingdom, Canada, all of us who consider ourselves to be Christian nations, we have a huge responsibility in the presence around the world. Whether it be the missionaries that we send out or the message that we send out. This was a great trip, and I really just can't express my thanks enough for all the support that I got, all the prayers. These kids are forever grateful. Is there any questions about Chris? You always have questions. Yeah? See,
Are there any siblings among those kids on the picture?
I am not sure of that. I don't know. I believe they're all only children.
I noticed there's
No,
no girls.
yes, there are the original pictures that I got and the kids that I got. There was a couple of young girls, but I believe right now we just have young men just because of the boarding situation. All these kids will be cared for by one family, a very young family. I think he was 31 and his wife was same age, 31, 32, and they have one young son, so they're going to care for him just like family. And
what was the water situation like in that particular village for you guys?
Bottled water was very prevalent. Those that didn't have bottled water were just very, very, very destitute. But in that village, most people had bottled water, and usually it was filtered water that was on totes, much like Mexico, where they don't have running water. They have large totes of water that they put on top of the house that's non-potable water for washing and toiletry use. But usually our drinking water was bottled. If it wasn't, it was boiled and then put on the stove and boiled again for tea. It's just the way it's done, because if it's not bottled water, it has a bit of a taste to it. So.
Did you eat all those bananas that you're holding?
23.
23.
23.
And what amount of time?
It was a couple hours, maybe. No, not on the bananas, but they do eat a lot of ghost peppers. So I had my hot sauce. I was very happy.
So the orphanages are sponsoring the school. Is that how it's working? How does that?
So we work with an organization called IMN, and so we have sponsors here in the United States and abroad that are supporting those schools. It is also a private school, so the children that are not on sponsorship are paying a tuition. So our goal is, with this boarding house and with the tuition, is to get the school self-sustaining so that it's not constantly supported by the nonprofit. But
I think the question I have is, when you look out at the congregation, those that are here and those that aren't, what are tangible things that people in this room can do about something on the other side of the world? Easy question.
tangible.
Yeah.
Tangible?
Yeah. What's something we can do on a day-to-day or month-to-month?
Day to day, month to month. Think about the Christians around the world in your worship. So the message I brought to them, we visited a couple other villages on a Wednesday morning. It was really weird because I had this message all planned out when we went to Thailand. I was going to share it with the orphanage there that we visited 2 years ago, and it didn't fit with the situation, and so it was just like something that I kept in my heart that God laid on me. And this Wednesday morning, I woke up and I go outside, and so every morning the village women will walk up to the church to go pray. Well, this particular morning, for some reason, as they're walking up the road, everybody's singing. And then our sister that was cooking for us and doing all the kitchen woke up early in the morning, and this is about probably 5:30 a.m. I tend to get up early. But she woke up early for some reason that morning and went to the kitchen and started cleaning, and she was singing. And my friend, roommate, woke up and he's just humming a tune, humming along. And it reminded me of the message that I was going to carry to the orphans. And it was Zephaniah 3:17. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. And so I had a Tongkol Bible, and I had our chaperone read that same verse. If you read this verse in any English translation, it changes a couple words. It's not like the rest of English translations where you read the rest of the Bible. It's very, very similar. This one tends to change the word warrior or the word rebuke, or, it's just a little bit different every time you read it. In their translation, it was just so much more present and strong that the Lord, your God, is within you. He's a mighty warrior who brings refuge. He will give you a new life with his love. And he sings over you proudly. To think of this in a way, when we sing, we get to sing not only with God and the angels in heaven, but with every Christian around the world in worship. And that's a connection that we have in our worship. If you're ever unable to pray, which since that day I've had some struggles in finding out how to pray, like what do I pray for? I just find a hymn or a song to just hum along and sing for a little bit, and it brings me into connection. So think of everyone around the world when you worship. God brought us into a family, not just this family, not just this congregation, but every Christian around the world. Every single one of us has an amazing privilege that we take for granted every day. There's so many people here, maybe not in this room, but here in the U.S., that would rather come to a service and allow the pastor to pray for them when we have the privilege to come before God.
Reminds me of the Lord's Prayer. It begins with our Father. Not just my Father. He's not just the God of me, myself, and I, but the God of all of us, and the God of those kids right there, and the God of Tyler, the God of you, and God of us all. And he's not just a God. He's not just a being. He is our Father. He loves us more than we can imagine. And to carry that with us into that, we're going to take a moment here to be praying for him, and then we're going to go ahead and go into a time of singing. We're going to worship the Lord as we've been encouraged to do that. And then we're going to go back and we'll sing the Build Your Kingdom here. And as I was listening to Tyler and at the same time discerning what do we do next is not just to rush on and do something else, but let's rejoice in the Lord for what he's done. But at the same time, as we rejoice, let's pray for these things. I think tangible things that come to my mind that you can do. One is, if you're not supporting a mission effort somewhere, get involved. Now, yes, we do that as a church. When you give in the tithes and offerings, when you put money in that plate, some of that money does go to missions efforts. But predominantly to support missionaries, I strongly encourage that you find someone that you get behind and support. on a regular basis. That can be as little as $5 a month. And this is an option as well. I'm sure there's a financial need for this ministry consistently. If there's that many kids and the university to come, then there's those things you can do. So financially you can give. Don't give because you have to, but give because you want to see what God's going to do with your money. I mean, you can use your money for yourself, and you know what's going to go there. But what's God going to do with your money if you do something like that? If you need help figuring out how to do that, you can talk to people like Tyler. You can talk to my mom, Connie, who leads the hymn with Bethany in the morning. We can connect you with different missionaries. There's a lot of options on that. But I think one thing is give. Second thing is pray. The third thing is go. Go. Until you go on a trip like this, until you go and serve, it's just something you see. It's just pictures. It's out there. But once you go, it transforms that things you see in your mind and takes a hold of your heart, and you begin to see God work in you and through you as he works in and through other people. So I think those are good things. So how should we pray for these kids specifically, Tyler?
So specifically?
Yeah.
I just pray that they are blessed in their new home, that they feel God's love, that they feel a new family, that they grow with their age, they grow in spirit as well. They grow just to a point where they can go out and take everything that they've learned educational-wise and theologically and spread it throughout the rest of the world there.
And this conflict as well, that it could come to an end so that there could be easier access for missionaries to do exactly what you guys did. Because I know that was one of the big concerns is what obstacles are we going to face? And it went pretty well. Just coincidentally, you know, one of those things are God provided, but then at the same time, that may not stay the same ease.
Yes. So the conflict in Myanmar, that they find a resolution, whatever it may be, that it be God's will, that they just clean things up there and move forward. The conflict there in the northeast, that whole corridor, Manipur especially, it's been labeled as the Manipur situation. It's very localized, but it has shut down all of their hopes of tourism, all of their hopes of building a more solid, what we would say GDP or infrastructure. And I just pray that hope comes back. I don't want to be involved in the political aspect of what their conflict is over. But if you're curious, you can check it out. But that they just find a resolution in why they're fighting and what the conflict is about.
All right. If there's no other questions, then we'll invite the worship team up and we'll sing. In the midst of the song, as we sing, there's a break after the first chorus, and I'm going to take time to pray for these very things. So as you think about those kids that we saw on the screen, as you think about what Tyler shared about the government issues, about the politics, but also about asking God, like, what about me? What do you want me to do?